You want to be a writer. You want to learn to write. How to start writing.
Radio Retro Future.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bansard of Radio Retro Future, and this is like my 5th attempt at making this video, but I became so long-winded, I'm gonna get straight to the point. You want to be a writer. You want to learn to write. How to start writing. And that is probably one of the most asked questions that I get. How do I start writing? I have a character. I have a world. What to do with it, I don't know. And that's where I want to talk to you about the organic writing process that is being a creative. Now, when you look at old works, let's say like from antiquity and even the Middle Ages, you'll see their author often start with hailing the muses, praising the muses, and asking them for their help. And you're like, what do muses? Muses are not real, they're made up, so why even mention them? And it's actually, muses are very real, except because you do not produce, muses never visited you. So what is a muse, you ask? Well, when I would talk about the creative process with an actual creative, someone who's doing this for years, I could probably explain it very simply. Because muses are a funny thing. They come to you when you're working on something. They whisper all these random ideas. It's how you start with one idea for a story and it turns out into something else. A grain of my upcoming book is one such character. When I started writing, I started with kind of like a criticism on Clark Tech. I made more videos where I mentioned that term before. But eventually she became her own thing with her own problems and dilemmas, and that is because I had muses whispering into my ears that this character had a lot more potential than I took her credit for at the beginning when I wrote her. And that is something you have to learn. Get in contact with your muses. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, again, I cannot stress this enough. Muses don't come to people who don't use their creative energy. So you're going to have to work. You're going to have to start writing. If you want to learn to swim, you have to step into the water. If you want to learn to draw, you're going to have to pick up that pencil and start drawing lines. It is that simple. And the same is for writing. You're going to have to start your story with, "It was a dark and stormy night," or "Once upon a time." It is that simple, really. But how? Like, I have a character, I have a world, I want to use them. It's like, yeah, yes, that's all fine and good. However, one of the things that is not talked about enough on places like authortube is that one of the things you also have to learn as a creative, be it drawing or writing, is how to manage your time and energy, especially your creative energy. You don't always have it with you. So one of the first habits you have to learn is write at least 15 minutes a day. It doesn't matter what you're writing. It doesn't need something you actually are gonna finish. That's not the point. You have to write, you have to learn, you have to make it a habit. And then you can actually become a creative. Like I said before in my Why You Should Start Writing Today video, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Okay, enough about that. So how to get started with writing? How do I get ideas for stories? Well, there are multiple ways that are tried and tested methods. Some of them will work for you, others will not. Personally, I start with a central idea and I start thinking about how to explore that. Usually I just start scribbling lines, kind of stream of consciousness, I suppose. Which is, I guess, as good a place to start as any. Stream of consciousness, what is that? So, there are multiple ways of using stream of consciousness. First of all, stream of consciousness is just typing whatever comes to mind. Some writers do this whenever they start writing. It's like their introduction for their day's work, to start their creative process, where they just start writing whatever comes to mind, like their daily grind, whatever, their daily complaints, their daily struggles, whatever. There's two reasons for that. One is just to get those creative juices flowing, get in the spirit of things, focus on the screen, and just start working. The other reason is to get rid of like any thoughts that are just buried in their mind. It's to get rid of them so it doesn't end up in their stories. It happens to some writers. Personally, I don't do it. I kind of like start with an idea and I just start, oh, well, it could be introduced this way, it could be introduced this way, and then I figure out organically where the themes are and everything. So, because there's this really scientific way of approach to writing that's being taught on places like authortube, and I see there are points to it, but I don't think it's very productive. I never been able to maintain many of those methods. So, stream of consciousness, just write whatever, for whatever reason, be it to get in the flow of things, be it to just see where the story goes, really. The second one is the use of illustrations. I find this a fun one. If I already have plenty of story ideas, so I don't really need it at this point. But when you are like a blank slate, you don't know what to write, and you're like, let's say this is a good one, probably for story contests, to be honest. Yes, let's go with that. Let's say there's a story contest, and the theme is airships. Okay, what you do, you go to the Google Docs, or, sorry, your Google Images, and you type in airships, and you're like, I also like a particular landscape, like dark airship, I don't know. And you find the image, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna describe a scene that is taking place in this image. It could be like a character encountering that. It could be like, oh, the airships are fighting, so you start writing a story about the captain in that very fight, etc., and see where it goes. Start with a single scene, start with whatever, and see where it goes. It will surprise you how productive you can get, and if, it doesn't work, just start with a new image. And you keep going until you are like, okay, this is the story I want to write. Or combine them. Oh, you can turn random images into kind of like a comic for yourself. And like, okay, well, first this is going to happen. I'm going to describe what's happening in this scene. Then I'm going to describe what's happening in this scene. Then I'm going to describe. And before you know it, you have an entire story ready to be explored. So that's the image method. Then there is the writing prompt. Actually, the writing prompt is very similar to the illustrations that I just mentioned, except with words. There are a lot of places where you can just get daily prompts. And again, the point is not to write the perfect story. The point here is to get into writing. So to get practice, to get exercise. And before you know it, you'll actually are writing actual characters and scenes that you actually want to continue and write books about. But before that, you need to practice getting those creative energies going. Now, last way I can think of right now is text prompts. Just images, random words like, okay, you gotta write a story about a bulldog, a carrot, and a limousine. And if you don't like that prompt, just pick another one. And so on. And basically you can just do the same method as I just mentioned with the illustrations. Turn it into kind of like, okay, this comic scene describes this comic scene describes that, and so on. So there's multiple ways to get started on writing. Now, for those who have more exercise in this, what is your way to get started on stories? I myself am very inspired by historical events. That's where my muses come from. They come from history, stories from history. Like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome to have that story take place in my universe, take place in my setting? Or wouldn't it be great to have a character like that famous person in this situation? So that is really what inspires me. If there is a media, I guess it's kind of like the writing prompts in a way. If there's like a form of media that you really enjoy, if there's like, for example, like history, maybe for you it's science fiction, or watching stories about animals. Maybe you get really inspired by watching Animal Planet. Who knows? But if there is a type of media for you that triggers creative ideas, use that. Even if it's just, oh, I've got a stupid idea about a koala bear chasing a leopard or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But as long as you learn to get those creative juices flowing. And once you have those creative juices flowing, the muses will come to you and they'll start giving you other random ideas, and they'll come at you at the most odd opportunities. For many of us, it's like when we're in the shower or on the toilet. That's your fun fact for the day. And with that, I'm gonna end this episode. If you enjoyed this video, please check out the link below, www.associationofisrael.com/keys, which will lead to our pre-launch page for the Bound for the Sticks Kickstarter, which is my upcoming book. And we're gonna include some really nice extras like a compendium and other stuff that we're working on. We're considering doing a recipe book as well. To get acquainted with the archaeology cuisine, which is the setting where it takes place. We actually have a video on that, so you can check that out somewhere on the screen right now. And with that, yeah, if we get 50 followers on our Kickstarter page, I'll give a free short story, a PDF, fully graphically made. Maybe with if we get 75 followers, I might actually give away a short comic that explains a little bit of the background of Bound for the Sticks. So go check that out. Please tell your friends. Yeah, with that, make things your way. Good night.